All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. My name is Nathan Chaney, and I am your host today and every day here on the Supply Chaney podcast. Welcome to Bill Pedriana, who is the president of Noble Lift North America. Met Bill through the Supply Chain Social Club event that we hosted a month or two ago, and Noble Lift was part of the action. And, the way things happen here is one conversation leads to another, and you wind up on a podcast. Bill, welcome on to the show. And if you could just take a few minutes and introduce people to a little bit more about who you are.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Nathan. And it's good to be on the podcast. I enjoyed the event we were on the other day as well. It was very well done, and I really enjoyed it. But I'm Bill Pedriana. Like you said, I'm the president of Noble Lift North America. I'm a Wisconsin guy. I have four kids that one's in high school still, three in college. But been in the lift truck industry and material handling industry pretty much my whole life. Sold my first forklift when I was 16 years old. Uh, right, so I kind of learned the business from my father, who was very mechanically oriented. Let's say, he's kind of like a gearhead when he was younger, and really liked machinery. So that was something that was always a conversation around the dinner table growing up. And it was very easy for me, kind of learning the business from my father, and then going through business school at the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, and then looking for a job when I have my business degree coming out of school. There's a lot of different options, but like a lot of people in my line of work, you learn a lot of tribal weird knowledge in a business like the lift truck industry, and it's the easiest path to get a decent job. And it's kind of been with me and a lot of others like me ever since. So I'm actually like a third generation. My grandfather on my mom's side was into the crane industry, and did a lot of material handling cranes through P&H company here in Milwaukee. So my grandfather was in material handling, my dad was in material handling, I'm in material handling. So it's been kind of one of those lifetime kind of things for me.
Wow. A lot of people will look at me and say you were born to be in supply chain, but I think, Bill, you might not have like material handling in your name, but it
Right.
definitely is clear you were born to be in material handling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much everything. I mean, everything I ever had, other than a stint that we might talk about in a little bit. When I was in Chicago for a few years, I had a little bit of a adventure for a few years outside the industry. But yeah, it's pretty much everything I've already ever done. I have a huge passion for it, especially when it comes to like pushing a lot of the kind of industry kind of conventions, like either forward or just breaking them completely. And with a focus, which I learned from my father once again, who I might bring this up a few times today because you're talking about me and kind of how I relate to what I do. So that's kind of my, the ground floor on all that is kind of my background. Being that third generation person in the industry. But the way I was taught this business was from a very young age. I heard lots of stories about just going out there and basically fighting for your customer, trying to help them solve their problems, and doing it in a way that was really, I mean, I guess I didn't really recognize it at the time, but like kind of high minded, like where it was like kind of the idea is like, hey, you go out there, you apply your trade, you learn things, you get better at it. And, your mission in life is to try to help the other companies in your neighborhood, your community, or whatever, help them be more successful. And it's kind of like one of those things that, the rising tide floats all boats, right? Like, so that's the way I kind of learned my approach in the business. And that really kind of has carried me all the way through where I'm at today, is not just like kind of putting the customer first. That's like kind of trite. I think it's something that kind of gets said a lot, but really more just like kind of internalizing, kind of your craft as a way to like, kind of help everybody rise around you, and not necessarily focus so much on your own, goals and KPIs, which are important, but it's more important, I think, at the end of the day that you go out there and make a difference for people, help them get to the next level, and the rest kind of takes care of itself, is what I've kind of found, and how I was mentored. So that says a lot about how I look at things, both in the industry and outside of it.
I like it. I think especially in your case, you seem to have been built with a long-term perspective and a generational sort of perspective on this, not a short-term transaction this quarter, this year type of deal, but this decade or whatnot. This how is this going to look in the long term? And it seems again, it's very obvious, I guess, given your sort of life, your family history and stuff in it. But that seems like it's a great way to look at it. And it's unfortunately not more people look at business and relationships and partnerships in that kind of light. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in Wisconsin? I'm here in Texas. I've born and raised in Texas, and so all I ever know is 100-degree days during the summers, all the time, every day. But you're currently talking to me in late June with a jacket or a coat on
Yep.
there in your backyard, and so just tell me what's it like growing up north?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I think a lot of times parts of the country like Wisconsin get a bit like overlooked, or people kind of know, like how business is done in the South, or what it's like in the South, or they know kind of how Texas is different, or California or New Jersey. Those have like kind of tropes that, in whether it's in the business community or just regular interactions with people, people kind of understand kind of those areas of the country and the culture a little bit more. But Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan are kind of a question mark to a lot of folks. And I mean, it's great. The Great Lakes states. I mean, the climate is pretty harsh in the winter, but the change of seasons is very stark. And I think, being I grew up in a house where it was a new development. First, this like goes, man, we're gonna get deep tonight, Nathan. Because if we're gonna talk about me and kind of about Wisconsin, I mean, there's a lot there. The first house I can remember was it was there were a lot of new developments in the late '70s, early '80s when I was a kid, around outside of Milwaukee. And this is where the malls and all the sprawl kind of just started, late '70s, early '80s, right? And so there were a lot of new neighborhoods. And the first house I went into was in a new development. It was the first home my parents bought built from the ground up. Once again, my dad selling forklifts to pay for the pay for the mortgage, right? He had like I think he had like my mom had a '68 Chevelle Super Sport in the driveway. And it was a cool little box house, typical suburban '70s house. But the thing that was cool about it is that my bedroom window opened up to an outdoor movie theater. The subdivision had literally been built in the back of behind an outdoor movie theater. Yeah. So 1977, I was 7 years old. And um, guess what came out in 1977, in the summer of 1977? Dun, dun, dun,
I'm
dun, 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 dun.
okay. It's
Star Wars, right?
yeah, yeah.
So at 7 years old, I think I must have watched it almost every single night with my transistor radio out my bedroom window, watching it, right? So that has become kind of like a running gag with people that know me, that I have like this Luke Skywalker complex, that I'm always trying to like fight the Empire or something like that, right? And Wisconsin, I mean, back then Wisconsin was pretty magical, right? You'd have really strong summers and really cold winters and a really pronounced fall and spring. And as a kid, it's pretty magical, because Halloween really feels like Halloween, and Easter is really Easter, and Christmas is really Christmas, and Fourth of July is really Fourth of July, because it's like the seasons are so pronounced. So like those summers growing up, like all those things, outdoor movie theaters, cruising around when you're in high school and you're like Mustang with like T-tops or something like that, listening to like hair metal or something. It was a really great place to grow up, and it's a great place to raise a family, because of that diversity of just what the seasons bring to enrich everybody's lives, I think. And schools are good. And with my four kids, I think been very privileged to kind of like raise them in my hometown the past, at least the last 12 years, that we've been up here. Again, I went to Chicago for a while. Now I came back, back close to home.
Okay. Wow, that might be, like, the most unique and interesting sort of personal story that anyone's shared on here, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, really awesome. So maybe moving forward, I guess in your timeline of life
Yeah,
here, you got out of the house, you had all of this forklift and material handling type of momentum behind you, and you
right.
went off to college, and looks like you may have studied marketing and management and that sort of stuff. Is what did you go into school thinking you wanted to become when you grew up, and kind of how was that school experience?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really think that the gravity of what my father taught me would like pull me right in, like into the forklift game or into material handling. But I knew I really liked business. I liked the idea of making things. When I was in high school, I would do like roofing with my uncle in the summers. And we'd get up there, and you'd be paid by the square. So a square of shingles is like three bundles of shingles are on a layer of a pallet. There's a pallet of shingles you put up on a roof, and every layer is like three bundles, and maybe each bundle's like, I don't know, 20 shingles, right? And it's piecework, and you're up there and you figure out how to like put all the nails in your hand so you can like smack it with a hammer and just keep going. This is before they had nail guns, right? And that experience really led me to understand that I really liked making something that at the end of the day I could look back at and say, like, man, I did that today, right? I could look back up at the work and I could see what I actually did, right? And so when I left high school and went to college, I kind of automatically knew I wanted to get into business, because it's something where, when you get into management, or potentially like I wanted to be an entrepreneur, that's really an avenue that I thought, that I could go and make something that I could look back at, like, right. And I wasn't necessarily a great carpenter, so I didn't want to get into home building, but I knew I wanted to be in business to make things, and that continues with me today. A lot of what I do, and have done over the past many years, is be highly involved in product development. That's something that I really, really enjoy a lot, is kind of taking what I've learned over the years about application and warehouses, distribution centers, factories, and just kind of coming up with maybe a different type of machine or a different type of solution that just provides some additional benefits once again, so that those companies can just get better at what they do, right? The same thing I kind of mentioned earlier.
I 100% know how you feel about that, because I grew up in the country, with cows and barns and
Yep.
tractors, and you gotta, if something's broken, you're fixing it yourself, with whatever you've got in the barn. And that ability to build something and be able to look back and say, "That's what I built." Isn't that awesome? On the same sheet of music with you on that one. That's really cool.
Yeah, and
And,
even for customers too, like, right, you go into the thing I enjoyed the most about material handling is that, well, the thing I absolutely cannot stand even to this day is going into an operation and, talking about things like price. Like that, I just shut down with that kind of stuff. But when somebody takes me through a facility and gives me the Boy Scout tour and shows me like how their process works, and like from the raw materials to the finished goods and everything in between, that's fascinating to me, right? And then being able to like look at situations and, come up with something that say, hey, have you ever thought about maybe doing this way, based on my background. It doesn't take months to have that moment where you sit back and you say, oh, look what I made, or like what I help somebody build or a team build. You can almost do it like on a daily basis when you have the approach of just basically hey, help me understand and learn from you. Like, how do you guys make this? How do you make the pizza before you ship it to the supermarket? Like the frozen pizza guy, you could go into their facility and like just be there to learn is a great way to figure out, to get in a position to apply a solution and come up with something that's new.
Yeah, certainly.
So it's
So
fun. It's the fun
you
part.
start you started
Yep.
talking about that this is what you've been, the kind of capacity and roles you've been in. Could you walk us a little bit through those sort of like those companies and those roles that you have been in up till Noble Lift?
Wow. Okay. So out of college, I went and I worked for Minnesota Lift Truck. It was a Toyota dealer, and I dove in. Right away. The pay was pretty good. Coming out right my first year out of school because of I had some experience, and I went to Toyota boot camp and like stayed up and I remember staying up until like 3 in the morning working with one of the Toyota corporate guys to like try to do the best job on the project for the boot camp, right? And like I was just super into it. Did that for a few years and had about a fourth of the state as like a regular kind of sales rep for a material handling company. Then I got offered a position to be a regional for attachment manufacturer, Long Reach Broody, who was doing like pallet transfers and carton clamps and all sorts of application based, kind of attachments for forklifts that once again got into that kind of solution space a little bit more. And I had a regional position with them for 7 years. Um, and then they were kind of struggling, at the time. And um, there's a dominant player in our industry today that Cascade, I think most people know about that are in the warehousing space. They were the 800-pound gorilla, and I wasn't working for them. And so, but I was in Chicago, and then I started looking around for other opportunities that were more local, and I didn't have to travel. And I got a job with some material handling companies in Chicago, and worked under a couple folks there until 1999 when I decided to marry my longtime college girlfriend, my wife Tara, and she was a huge dog lover. And unfortunately for her, well, fortunately for us, but unfortunately for her, when she moved down to Chicago, her nursing kind of education didn't translate in Chicago because she had done it in Minnesota. And so she was like kind of looking like, what do I do down here? It's like, okay, I'll move down, Bill, and this is cool. I'm on board, but like, what am I going to do? And her being a big dog lover, we stumbled across this USA Today article about Yuppie Puppy in the someplace in New York. And it was like kind of this kind of weird, like human interest story in the life section of USA Today or something like that. And we were looking at this thing and like, man, that daycare for dogs is this thing with, like Yuppie Puppy was doing. Like that sounds like fantastic, and she was all about it, right? So she found some folks that were doing dog walking and some things for a little bit a period of time, and started pursuing this idea. And we got married, and then we almost immediately we opened Dogs Day Inn, which was the first open, like basically the first daycare in the Midwest for dogs. And we were so far ahead of the business, like people thought we were absolutely crazy. Like we
Yeah.
opened we opened it up in an old VFW post, and like literally these guys at this like kind of blue collar bar next door called Augie's, they were just laughing their heads off. Like, daycare for dogs was like the most ridiculous thing anyone had ever heard. And even the landlord that rented us the VFW, the former VFW hall to start the business, I think he really thought we were going to fail and he was going to make a quick buck. But it was a fantastic success, and we did that for a number of years. Eventually, gifting it to the manager for his service. Because he did such a great job, we basically were able to raise our kids without a whole lot of problems, and we ended up gifting the business to him, which was a lot of fun. And then the Great Recession hit, and I got a call about an opportunity to help revive a company I knew and loved, which was Big Joe. And my dad was really good friends with the owner, and that's one of the things around those dinner table conversations over years was all about this specific brand. and they were having a lot of problems back in '09 because of the Great Recession. And I got involved to kind of help them chart a course forward back in 2009 and reorganize. And I did that for 14 years up until 2 years ago. And then they had gotten to a scale where, they wanted to get kind of more focused on different types of products and a different kind of approach. And I had kind of put in my service to kind of do the best I could with them. And then an opportunity came up to take this role at Noble Lift, which kind of puts me back into a role where I can really try to be, kind of break some conventions, bring up some new kind of ideas to market, and be kind of more entrepreneurial and innovative again. And so that's where I'm at today. And over the next year, I've got a lot of stuff coming out that I'm going to do just kind of that, kind of complete that mission.
Wow. When you were talking about the Dog's Day Inn, I'm
Yeah.
imagining what it was like when the very first, like Uber drivers ever showed up, and that whole concept of getting in a stranger's car to take a ride with someone that you've never met, like these, just that innovative first of its kind experience that you've got to educate people on that this is okay, it's acceptable, we're not uh yeah, man, that's really cool to hear that story. I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah,
um
it was wild. And I was on that Uber thing too. I mean, I've seen a lot of this kind of stuff come and go. I'm 50, whatever, 54 right now, and it's been very interesting the past, you know, like kind of I finished college when there really wasn't even an internet yet. So I mean, like, it's been really interesting to see how technology has transformed society. And even like Uber, I remember my best friend, who was my best man at my wedding, Eric, my good buddy. He was in San Francisco, and I was out there visiting. We were out there, kind of just cruising around, bar hopping. And he's like, "Dude, you got to check out an Uber." And I'm like, "What's an Uber?" And he's like, he was all excited about it. And back then, it was only limousines when they first started, and it was in the Bay Area, which today and now you see the Waymos and stuff. It's kind of the new version of this. But you're right. When it first came out, it's like, what do you mean you can call like cab on the internet? Like, what is this all about? And like, you get out. And so originally it was just like people would go out and get these limousines on Uber and go bar hopping with their friends. Which kind of reminds me of how Facebook got started, right? It was like you get a group of young people that are, like very kind of willing to try new things, and in the right environment with a kind of right situation, and a certain kind of magic can happen. But it does take a while for the general population to really understand some of these new concepts. And I do think that's where we're at with AI right now. I think everybody's interested, but nobody necessarily really understands quite how it's going to affect their lives personally or professionally yet.
I would be curious because you are definitely the foremost expert in material handling that I've ever talked with on the podcast. So, and with sort of this multi generational type of lineage, I'd be interested if you could talk through some of just pick a couple of the trends that you've been able to witness and see happen from your earliest experiences, and then like where those things are now. Like one, for example, would be power source. Power sources, moving from propane, diesel, electric, that sort of thing, and maybe internet connectivity and intelligence and
Sure.
autonomy and all that sort of stuff. If you could talk through some of those concepts and how you've had experience seeing them over time, and maybe where you see them going. But yeah, I'll let you kind of run with that.
Well, free will on that one. Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics. I mean, really, I mean, when you think about material handling and supply chain, I think if it was 30 years ago, and you were talking with friends and family, or something at a picnic or whatever, some kind of event, right, where people just talk about, hey, what do you do? Their eyes might glaze over a little bit, right? It's like, oh, you work with warehouses, and like, oh, and like it's fun to be in the space right now because now it's like the sexiest place in the economy. And people have finally realized that like everything we get in our daily lives or that we depend on goes through the supply chain. And COVID kind of taught us COVID taught us some lessons on that about, supply chain resilience, how that's important. Obviously, we've seen how the internet has radically changed distribution and just even consumer behavior. Just like incredibly. Like, I mean, it's startling to kind of think about like, a Sears catalog in 1982 versus the ability to like, just click and get now almost anything you want, anywhere you want. I have some Gen Z kids, and this is not directly in the warehouse supply chain, but it's like just getting a dasher to come over and bring you Jimmy John's now. It's like it's so just like it's like a convenience culture, and the supply chain has not only had to go through trials and tribulations and transformations to get to that point. It's also had to endure some really intense setbacks and events of just, like dealing with like shocks to the system to get where we're at today. And so is there any one thing that's changed? I mean, everything has changed in so many ways, right? I mean, you could look at things like moving from on that whole spectrum from case picking to each picking and all the strategies that have to come up with that from different types of, setting up zone picks and wave picks and all sorts of different types of strategies for how you store things. Um, but it's all of it's been kind of on a, kind of on a spectrum or on a continuum, I guess is the better way to think about it. Like electric forklifts have been around since the early 70s, like, so it's nothing new. It's just that the technology now with lithium and some of the other things that have converged now just make it so much more logical to adopt it for so many more companies. And same thing with automation. AGVs were also around in the 70s. They thought one of these, once again, one of these dinner conversations at home growing up was like, oh, AGVs are coming in. Forklifts are all going to die. And it's just going to be all robots. And this is like 1979, right? So it's just now the technology has gotten so much more simplified and robust. And it just, now it's kind of the time that you're seeing the robotics and automation really starting to take off. But it's all been like kind of this continuous, technological growth in supply chain. And I think maybe one of the things, if, from that perspective, the long view, if I could add, for anybody that might be watching this and curious about, what someone like myself, a material handling kid from Wisconsin might think what the future looks like, right? Based on my background. I kind of think a few things. I think in the next couple years, we're going to go through a little bit of a bumpy ride and there's going to be a transition as things kind of get on track. And because there's the power of AI right now cannot be understated. It is absolutely going to totally transform society and totally transform everything the supply chain does. It's just kind of a matter of when. And so I think there's going to be a period where things are going to feel like, yeah, nothing's really happened yet. It's kind of the same old thing. And underlying that, there's gonna be this feeling of kind of like, yeah, there's something changing, but I can't put my finger on it, right? And what I think is really going to change is that you're going to see significant amounts of job losses, probably in some industries. You're going to see some organizations in the supply chain basically kind of push against automation in some ways when they should be moving forward on it, because this transition is not going to take long. A couple years, like in my opinion, a few years based on how I've seen things kind of moving over the past 30. And I think what's going to happen is that actually we're going to get into a situation that we are going to boom like absolutely crazy. And the reason for it is that I kind of think of it this way, is that the ability to create kind of a layer of information in a warehouse that breaks all of the traditional SaaS models of all the data and software that the supply chain is currently like dependent on is going to create a situation in supply chain that it's going to like kind of democratize so many new companies and startups to come in and provide value. And if you take that same kind of analogy and you apply it to the broader economy, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see that because labor through robotics and automation and intelligence are going to become less and less expensive to get and more accessible to people, a lot of business opportunities or business ideas are going to now make more sense, where it's going to be easier for entrepreneurs to like bring new things to market, and it's going to have this incredible democratizing effect where you're going to see all sorts of new startups and new types of companies come into play with things that economically would have made no sense. Like for instance, like DoorDash is a perfect example, right? Like try to make DoorDash work in the 1980s. There's no way you would be able to make it economically feasible, right? But when you make labor and data kind of open, kind of free up data exchange, and you bring intelligence at a very low cost across many different types of commercial interests, you're going to see kids come out of college not with a roadblock in front of them, but like a highway in front of them to like bring whatever they want to bring to market, because it's so empowering to them and so easy for them to make something that is economically viable. And so if that's right, and I kind of think that's my working assumption that I'm working with, otherwise I wouldn't have said it. I think for folks in the supply chain and material handling, what that looks like is a couple things. One is that I would highly recommend people to look at resilience and flexibility more so than like trying to paint with straight lines and optimizing around like, oh, like we get enough velocity, we'll automate this. Like, like trying to like think that they're gonna be able to like predict what's coming at them. I think opposite. I think if companies should be thinking about adopting new technologies as quickly as possible to get them in the game, like just to try things and put them in a position where they can be highly adaptive. So um, be ready to react. Be ready, position yourself so you can take advantage of different technologies whenever they might pop up, and be flexible in your approach, as opposed to trying to say, hey, I'm going to turn my warehouse into a soda machine and everything's going to be totally, like in a box on a grid and everything's going to be perfect, white sheet of paper. That's not what's going to, I don't think that's going to play out very well. I think the companies that get ready for massive transitions, massive adoption, and thousands of new entrepreneurial companies coming to market with new ideas to serve an increasingly click and get kind of culture, those companies in supply chain are going to absolutely dominate the next generation. And I think it's going to be the most exciting time I've ever seen as far as, being in the space.
All right. Well, I took some good notes there, and we'll open up the time capsule in a couple of years, and we'll see
Right.
what
See if
happens. See what happens.
see if I'm right. Right. See if the crystal ball is comes true.
Look, Bill, we've talked a lot on a number of topics here, but what we haven't covered, and I'm actually really want to make sure that the guests go away with, is just what is Noble Lift? Who are you? Where do you exist? What kind of business do you operate? Because I must be honest that it's only been recently that I've heard about you.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned Toyota, and you've mentioned some other brands that everyone in warehousing and logistics has heard of. But being in the industry 15 years, and Noble Lift being a new name in my brain, that might be the case for others. So could you take a little bit and just tell us a little bit more
Sure.
about it?
Yeah, sure. So Noble Lift, there's a reason for that a lot of folks don't know the name. And that's because the majority of Noble Lift's business is actually contract manufacturing for others. So of all the manufacturers of industrial trucks in the world, Noble Lift is the leader on contract manufacturing for others. So that's one of the things that one of the reasons that people don't know it as a household name is they know it under a lot of other people's brands, the equipment, right? And I tend to think of Noble Lift when I try to kind of summarize it to people. It's kind of like the Foxconn of forklifts. We're a global manufacturer. We have multiple facilities, and in different countries around the planet. Most of it's in Southeast Asia, where we have a low cost of production. That's why we can do contract manufacturing just like in a lot of industries for others. But um, where we're at today and why I'm here and what I want to do with it, do with Noble Lift and the brand, it definitely fits with that kind of background, which is this idea of, kind of collaboration and doing their part, what they do well. And it gets back to my kind of my story that I told throughout this podcast, is that Noble Lift is positioned very, very well to bring product to market that is very non-conventional under the Noble Lift brand. And definitely have like more of a collaborative strategy that fits with this idea of this potential shock coming into the space. So because if all this stuff is going to be in transition, it's going to need to have a company that is willing to kind of try new things and is really good at kind of low cost production to bring some new ideas to market, and do it in a way that is kind of very collaborative, and once again kind of open source, open ecosystem kind of approaches, right? Because that's the idea: collaboration, open source, open ecosystems, doing more of that type of thing to give people that run our factories, warehouses, cross docks, whatever, give them more choices and flexibility so they can take advantage of new technologies that come into the space very quickly and be highly adaptable to the needs of their customers, because it's going to be super unpredictable. So, who is Noble Lift? Yeah, I mean, Noble Lift is a global manufacturer of forklifts. They're highly collaborative in nature, and they are, as a company with myself included as leading the North American charge here. I mean, we're looking to really think about how to rethink the normal paradigm of lift trucks, which was based on buy my forklift and then I'll make it up in parts and service over the life of the truck. That was the traditional industry. We're really not really looking in that at all. We're more like, instead of creating a captive ecosystem like that, we're like looking like, how can we be open, how can we be of service, and how can we help you guys be adaptable, flexible, and help you to respond to the changing landscape. That's where we're focused. And over the next year, folks will know Noble Lift more because we'll be at major trade shows, and I'm going to be launching a number of new vehicles that I'm really excited about, as well as a absolutely insane new concept at Modex 2026 on April 13th. So I'm marking my calendar, and I hope others will as well, because
All right.
that's really the mission I'm on over the next 6 months or so to get ready for
Okay.
that.
I remember seeing your booth at ProMat this past year. All the orange and green. It stands out really well, and whatnot. So can people buy Noble Lift forklifts now
Sure.
directly, or like
Yep.
how
Yep.
does that work?
Yeah, we've been in the U.S. market now for a few years. I think it's like 8. Started very small in the U.S. under our own brand, right? And so it's kind of been a slow rise under the Noble Lift banner. But we have, now at this point, I think we have 110 dealer locations around the U.S. We're very strong in, especially in warehouse products, reach trucks, stackers, any form of electric vehicle. Doesn't really matter if it's a lift truck and it's electric. There's a good chance we have a lithium version that's very well priced and very well manufactured that you could buy today through any one of our 110 dealers. We do have distribution centers in Chicago, Atlanta, and Georgia right now. And I don't think we haven't released anything on this yet, but as of July 1st, we're opening a Milwaukee Tech Center. That's going to be kind of over by if people are familiar with Milwaukee, it's right by the Harley Davidson Museum. So a good place to stop in and check out what the new toys are going to be in the R&D center for some folks in the industry. But that's kind of where we're at today and a little bit about where we're looking to go.
Awesome. Well, I'm here cheering you on. I'll be there at Modex 2026 to see the big reveal.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on and spending some time. I think we could continue this conversation easily for another hour or two. There's still so much to unpack, but we'll have to save it for another day. And so, Bill, thanks for coming on and sharing some time with us.
Thanks. Thanks for the conversation, Nathan. Really appreciated it.